Good evening. I'd like to call the special council meeting of Monday, January 9th, 2023 to order. First off, any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, need a mover and seconder to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Frank. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Frank. Resolved that the agenda for the January 9th, 2023 special council meeting be approved. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we'll move to report FIN 23-01, interim tax levy. Beth, hi.
Good evening, Council. So the report in front of you this evening is a pretty standard report. We do this every year. I did prepare some speaking notes just for some of you that are new to Council. So because the 2023 budget has not yet been set yet, and we do not have approved tax rates for 2023, the Municipal Act allows the town to tax our residents for 2023 based on 2022 rates for just the first half of the year. Each year, we bring this report to Council to improve the interim tax bylaw ahead of sending out our interim tax bills for the current year. So we are planning for interim tax bills to go out the end of the month, early February, and we are asking for approval of this report ahead of those bills going out. When the 2023 budget is approved and the 2023 tax rates are then approved by Council, the town will issue the final tax bills, show the total actual amount owing for 2023, and then credit the residents or ratepayers for the amount that we collected during the interim tax billing process. The one thing that I will highlight that's on this report that is different than previous years is the reference to the Niagara Transit Commission. And I thought it would be beneficial for Council to use this report just to provide you an update and give you some information and support you if you get any questions from residents. As you are aware, the Niagara region, as of January 1st, 2023, has taken on all oversight, delivery, funding, etc. of transit. And the plan is for the Niagara region to charge all Niagara region residents through the local area municipal tax bill, but with a separate line, which will be a regional transit levy, similar to what you see on your tax bills now for waste management services. So the region provides that information to us, and we levy for waste management on behalf of the region. We will do something similar for transit. Because the region did not tax for transit in 2022, they cannot ask us to add a line item on the interim tax bill for regional transit, because the Municipal Act is very prescriptive to say in the year following, you can, before the budget is approved, you can levy 50% of the previous year. But because the region didn't have a regional tax levy for transit, what they've asked us to do is continue to levy on the interim tax bill, the 50% of our budget that related to transit, and remit it to them. And then when they finalize their tax bills and prepare or provide that regional tax levy amount, we will then collect that and get credit for the amount that we've paid and collected and paid to the region on their behalf. So just to be clear, once the region's tax rates and their levy is set, they will provide the town with our regional levy amount for transit. We will include that on our final tax bills. And residents will not see anything on their interim tax bills different than what they've seen in the past. They're not going to see anything regarding regional transit on their tax bills that go out at the end of the month. Where they're going to see it is on their final tax bills. And so one of the region, through the area treasurers group, has been very good and helpful. They will provide, the expectation is they will provide significant resources, communication that we can leverage however we feel appropriate. They can provide inserts in our tax bills, anything that they can do to support that transition, moving from the town levy to this regional transit levy amount. And so we will look to get out ahead of that with our residents ahead of the final tax bills going out in the summer. That is my speaking notes. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has on that.
Thank you very much, Beth. Councillor Sharwell.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I have a series of questions, so
Sure.
I'll just communicate back and forth with you if that's okay. First question, are there any other municipalities in, not in Grimsby and Niagara that are doing it this way?
That's through the mayor. That's a great question. And yes, we did discuss this as an area treasurer group, and that was the consensus of the group, that each municipality would proceed in that manner. And there was support across all the municipalities except for one.
Which one's that? Can you say or no? No? Okay. My other question is if you could clarify in the one section where it says the town's final bill will be reduced for the removal 100% of the transit service costs, thus making the taxpayer whole. So that whole, if you can just
Yeah, that's
explain
what I
that.
was kind of trying to get in my speaking notes. So on our interim tax bills, basically, we're going to collect half of our budget for transit in 2022 was $250,000. We're going to collect from our residents $125,000. We're going to pay that to the region. The region's then going to tell us how much the new levy amount is, and we will deduct that off of it and only charge out the difference.
Okay, so this is my next question. So one of the things that I have a problem with is with Bill 23, we still don't know all the extra charges. And today I was reading a CBC article and it was talking about how, some of the GTA municipalities were anticipating it could go from, or taxes go from 6% to actually double, right? So my concern is that with this, here we're taking money and then we're saying that we're going to put that money back in, but how do we know that there's not a shortfall? And how are we accurately communicating to the public what they've paid and what's new? And, even with the Niagara Transit services, we don't actually get a whole lot for our services for the amount of taxes that we pay. And I just want to make sure that it's conveyed to the public exactly, so that there's no, what are we trying to hide kind of thing. So.
No, I, through the mayor, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, this is a big change for residents to see this on their tax bill, and there should be significant communication and awareness brought to this and what this means, how the amount was calculated, what they're getting for their money. Respectfully, though, I will say that the regional transit was approved by triple majority. All municipalities have supported regional transit. So regardless of, our viewpoints are around the dollar value, that is approved and will be moving forward on the tax bills. So we have limited ability to alter that.
Okay, so my only concern is that whatever we're paying is that it's whether it's through social media or whatever, that we are communicating that to the residents and that they know for sure where their money's going. That's my concern with that. And also, I know this is before your time, but last year we had a whole problem with people putting in their checks like on the day that they were to be paid, and then they were charged late, right? So I don't know if we can still do this or if this is something that needs amending, but again, through proper channels, whether we can say, if you're dropping a check off in the mail, it needs to be in by 5 p.m. on that day, 5:01 is late, just so that people know, so that there's no issues later, because it was crazy. I'm sure lots of people were complaining.
Through the mayor, I came in on the tail end of that, so I am well aware. We've done some improvements on our website, and it is noted on our drop slot out there. We do offer 3 days grace, so that was accommodated within our tax policy. So it does state that.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, do we have an estimate of the regional transit cost? Any sort of, ballpark figure? You said we budgeted $250,000 and $125,000 will be on the first half of the bill? So
my understanding is, so our current levy amount is $250,000. My understanding is that when triple majority was passed, the amount for the Grimsby Transit to right-size existing service, but what does that service really cost to deliver, I believe was $404,000.
So we can expect a $154,000 increase this year on the levy just for regional transit?
Yes, and I actually think that it could be higher. There was some reports that were done when the triple majority was passed. I am going to ask that they be circulated to council, because I don't believe, unless I'm mistaken, that they were circulated at that time. And then if you have questions about that, like that it might make sense to have someone come in from the region or have Councillor Seaborn here to answer any questions. I don't want to speak to what the region is asking for.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship, I obviously have some concerns about that amount of money being spent on the service that we are being provided. I'm glad that people could get a van to where they want to go, but $404,000 is a huge amount of money for that kind of service, and I wish I'd been part of the voting process in the first place, because I definitely would not have voted for that. In your report, you mentioned the installments, or that, the 50% tax payment in March and 50% in May. Many people opt to pay over 10 installments. That's not mentioned in your report. I assume it would just be reflected in the same way it does usually. I think it's June, the new bill comes out and it's corrected throughout the course of the year?
Through the mayor, yes, you're correct.
Okay, and final question. We've had significant discussions about changes to water and sewer rates. Again, I assume that's going to be reflected in the final bill. I know that the water bill is something separate, but the impact on the tax rate will be reflected in the final bill as well?
Through the mayor, that's absolutely correct. Okay. Similar to the change in the transit, we can't change. We can only levy based on what was in 2022, so that change would be adjusted for in the final bill.
Thank you, Worship.
Any further questions from council? Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. I know we all voted for it. Was there a time limit on how long we would participate before we reevaluated?
Through the mayor, I don't believe so. Can maybe get back to you on that around and it might be clarified in the regional reports if we circulate those, what was actually approved and the actual governance and timelines and the context for the agreement. So I think that might be helpful.
Any further questions or comments from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report, Beth. Have a good evening. Yeah, need a mover and seconder to pass the resolution. Moved by Councillor Corstanzi, second by Councillor Baradzi. Moved by Councillor Corstanzi, second by Councillor Baradzi. Resolved that report FIN 21-01, 2023 interim tax levy dated January 9th, 2023 be received, and that bylaw number 2301, being bylaw to provide the 2023 interim tax levy for the town of Grimsby, be approved, and that the interim tax levy installment due dates be set as March 3rd, 2023 and May 5th, 2023. All in favor? That's carried. All right, now we move to bylaw, or report BYL 23-01, discharge of firearms in Lake Ontario. Henry, welcome.
Thank you, Council, for having me. So the report you have in front of you is basically a report explaining the challenges that we face enforcing the firearms discharge on Lake Ontario. So the main one or, well, I should say the top three is border identification, offenders failing to identify, and the safety of our municipal law enforcement officers. So when it comes to border identification, unfortunately, on Lake Ontario, we don't have specific markers that mark the borders between Lincoln and Grimsby, is where a majority of the concerns have come from. So unfortunately, when it comes close to that and looking to prosecute down the road, when there is any doubt made, it does help the party, like the potential offending party. And then the next challenge we face is offenders failing to ID. So unlike the police services, we do not have the powers to arrest, detain, or hold individuals when they fail to identify. So fortunately, when they're coming from another municipality and we don't have any other means to identify, even potentially looking at an obstruct charge when they're failing to identify, we still need their identity. Because currently we don't have short form wording for this, for the specific bylaw in place, but we do this through another method of summoning them to court. So essentially, that judge or just the piece hearing that matter would make the fine in that case if found guilty. So that's where we could see a maximum fine of $25,000 for first offense for each individual, or up to $50,000 for each subsequent offense thereafter. So this is our current method, but both methods, from issuing a ticket to issuing a summons, both require the identification of the individual. So unfortunately, if we don't have the means of identifying, if they're not residents of the town, through other forms of information, we run that challenge of figuring out who this individual is. And then the next kind of key factor here is the safety of the municipal law enforcement staffing. So unfortunately, our staff are not equipped with sidearms and or the equipment that would protect us from potentially being shot by an individual with a firearm. So this is where working with Niagara Regional Police to ensure that the scene is safe before municipal law enforcement officer staff intervene is key, because at the end of the day, I would like to see my staff go home, and I would like to go home at the end of the day. So in conclusion, staff recommend that the town of Grimsby amend the discharge of firearms and bows bylaw number 2062 to include short form wording, set fines, and provide a new graphical boundary, including waters. Staff should be directed to contact the prosecution's office of Niagara to coordinate support for the enforcement of this, just to ensure that when potentially prosecuting these individuals, that we have the support of the Niagara Region prosecutors. And to amend coordinating support, so staff should be directed to conduct an open house and greater communication regarding the amended bylaw, and staff collaborate with NRP for assistance on enforcement. At this time, I'll take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Henry. Questions from council? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Worship, through you. So when we talk about an open house, are we talking about an open house where we're going to look at the bylaw and actually reflect on, whether we need to change the bylaw? The short form that we're talking about now, through you, Worship, we're talking about the bylaw that's already passed, but is that open house going to be to revise the bylaw or to just an information open house? Because those are two different things,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so our current bylaw as it stands does not include the short form, right? So if council decides today to include that, to provide direction to staff to include that in the new bylaw, the open house would be regarding the changes of the new bylaw. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
But, so I think it makes sense, but what you're saying is that it's just going to be an open house based on what we already have and not making any changes to the bylaw. It's just, the short form is just in order to ticket based on what we already have. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. the new bylaw would include the short form wording and maybe a more clarification on the boundaries and the waters and the rules behind that, why we do have a regulatory authority on bodies of water. So kind of that education piece, and we will invite NRP to provide that kind of a safety discharge of firearms and what that means, like with the other, how it's kind of to balance that, right? Like, there's going to be obviously two sides to this, and how the town, which side the town is taking in the approach that we want to take this to ensure the health and safety of everyone.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, my concern is with the existing bylaw and the boundaries, not on the water. The water is very close to residential, and but in rural, we have rural areas of Grimsby, like on the escarpment, for example, where farmers need to protect their livestock, where, the bylaw banning all firearms discharged within the town of Grimsby, I don't think reflects Grimsby as a both rural and urban area. And, having grown up on a farm and having still to this day some livestock, not a lot, I know that the need to protect that livestock from coyotes and from other predatory animals is important. And I do have a concern about the fact that we have a bylaw, I believe, if I'm wrong, please correct me, I have a bylaw that does not allow any discharge of firearms within the municipality now. Above the escarpment and outside the urban area, in my opinion, that needs to be reviewed. There are laws about discharge of firearms safely. There are laws that restrict, that there are rules that anybody who owns a gun needs to follow and needs to learn in order to possess a firearms permit. And if people do things illegally, then the police can get involved. But I do have an issue with not allowing a farmer to protect their livestock. So if I'm wrong about the way that the bylaw is written, then please let me know. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are exclusions, so Henry will touch upon that piece that you're talking about.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the current bylaw, there is exemptions in place for farmers because it is normal farm practice to be able to protect your livestock and or property as a farmer. There is also a longer list of more exemptions, like for example, like police officers and so on and so forth. So that exemption that you're speaking of does exist in this current bylaw.
Councillor Corstanzi.
Just a question on that. If a farmer's allowed to protect their livestock, is a farmer allowed to hire somebody to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the way that I understand it is essentially they would be able to discharge this animal if it is harming their property and or livestock, but they would also be able to hire somebody to do so, as they may not feel comfortable, but they wouldn't be able to harvest that animal, is my understanding. It would have to be only for the purpose of discharging it to protect it, but there'd be no allowance for harvesting. But that is definitely something that I can take a deeper look into.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Jordan, thank you. I have a series of questions as well, so just bear with me. My first is, if you could just give me an idea of how many complaints you have gotten, even just from the duck hunting alone. I've had a number, so I'm just wondering how many you've probably received.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say approximately from the date of this past Wednesday till today, I would probably say about 49 complaints is what I counted before this meeting.
Okay, so, yeah, so a lot, because this was an ongoing issue from last year, so I understand that. And how many times would you say that you personally went down and spoke with any of the hunters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was able to make contact on Friday, and we were able to speak to the individuals and explain the rules surrounding the current bylaw, and at that time, be able to issue a verbal warning at that time to cease all action.
So you were there personally? Because I have photos, and I'm just wondering if it was you that was personally there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I was personally there on Friday.
Perfect, thank you. And how many tickets, sorry, would you say that you've given?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did not issue any charges at this time because all parties failed to identify. So we had no powers to summons them to court as we did not know the individual's name, address, and date of birth as required for a charge.
Okay, so I do, like, just me personally, I live right around the corner, and I've been there, and I have license plates, residents have given me license plates, videos, photos. I'm just wondering if any of that has been captured and whether that will also hold up in court.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have to say that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice, that I just want to just explain kind of our process. But if that individual was willing to testify and be a witness for the municipality, it would be admissible in court. Sorry, I didn't get the first part of your question. Could you repeat it, please?
I was just wondering whether the license plates and the photos and the videos, whether that could also be used as well in court.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we currently do not have the power to search license plates for the purpose of this bylaw. So the only way that we can search plates is for parking offenses. For example, if they're late. So that is our agreement with ARIS, with the province of Ontario. So if we were to break that, unfortunately, we would lose that power for parking offenses. So unfortunately, we don't have that enforcement ability to be able to search a plate and find the ownership or name of that individual.
So, through you, Mayor Jordan, are we giving, that's enough questions for you, thank you, Henry. Can we give recommendations, like what we would like to add? Are we allowed to do that now, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear recommendations, because given the bylaw the way it is now, it doesn't work because hunters are non-compliant on IDing, so it's pretty well useless.
So some of the things that I would like to see with the open house, that when we do have an open house, if this is approved, that it's information only. It's not a matter of getting feedback and bringing this back to the table. Another thing is that there's some reference to the Territorial Divisions Act so that there's no ambiguity, so that if somebody wants to go back and look, they can find maps and it's there, it's covered. And if you want to fight it in court, go ahead, but it's there. And the last thing I would suggest, if we could also send this information, whether through Sarah or yourself, to the town of Lincoln, just so that they're aware, because I'm sure that they're getting complaints as well, and so they know what we're doing. So if we could communicate that, that would be great. Thank you.
Henry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just in response to the last point about the town of Lincoln, we've already started the collaboration. Unfortunately, they don't have a discharge of firearms bylaw that covers that portion of the lake, but it looks to be something coming down the road, and we've been in early discussions.
Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I see this issue somewhat twofold. One, there's a lot of miscommunication about the current bylaw and how far it extends. So we know that it extends out actually into the middle of the lake from Grimsby sides. So it's not a matter if you're more than 200 meters out or whatever. It's right out into the middle of the lake. So basically, you know, with the exception of, I guess, the shooting range, the D&D range, we don't sort of have just our authority over that. So, and I think there's been a lot of miscommunication. I don't think that the MR the Niagara Regional Police were fully aware. I think there's been some confusion with MNR. So one thing that we have to do is make it very clear that this is not permitted with the existing bylaw. And so we need to make an adjustment to the existing bylaw to make sure that it is enforceable. So that, I see that, and then there's a communications piece that goes with that, so that people are well-informed about what you can and cannot do with respect to duck, goose, whatever, discharge of firearms on Grimsby's waters. So that is one issue. However, this council also committed to doing a very robust consultation about the firearms bylaw in general. And that is something that we still have to do. So I see this really almost as two separate issues. One, we have to deal with the immediate problem of enforcement, but we still made a commitment to do this other piece. I respect that we're partly a rural community, and so there are issues there. I know we've had some issues with coyotes in urban areas. I'm not entirely sure how to deal with that, but we've had some incidents that are very worrisome. So we still need to do that really robust consultation and find out the proper way to take care of some of these issues that really are a threat to public safety. We also have up on the mountain, it isn't just a simple issue of, on the escarpment, below the escarpment, because we also have, the Bruce Trail and, other things that we need to take into consideration. So it is a very complex issue. So for me, the way I see this, just to recap, it's in two parts. One, we need to today do something to ensure that we properly communicate what the rules are with the current bylaw, to make sure that that's out there, and that we do whatever wording is required to make sure it's enforceable. And I understand now that Niagara Regional Police are understanding and are on board and are going to assist us. And we need to make sure that the fines are a significant deterrent, because it can't be the cost of doing business. So that's very important. So I think I'd kind of leave it there. That's my comment. Thank you.
See, do you want to go first?
All right, Councillor Cristanzi.
Thanks. I just had another couple questions. So with the bylaw saying there's no discharge of firearms on the lake, there would be no reason to have firearms in your boat, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be a personal situation, I guess, is up to that individual, if they wanted to carry a firearm and not discharge it on the lake.
Okay, that's a little weird. What I wonder is, there's really basically one main access to the lake that allegedly is getting paid to allow access to the lake for hunting. Is there recourse on the property allowing this to happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there would be some recourse there for the property owner for permitting this action to continue, and could be held accountable just as much as the individuals committing the offenses on the lake.
Thank you. One more. In the fines, is the recovery cost of the NRP responding covered in the fine?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be covered under fees and charges bylaw, and would be essentially recoverable as that's what it costs us to enforce such bylaw.
Councillor Sharwell.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I'm just wondering about guides, whether if you come along, whether there's anything, any bylaws pertaining to having to show proof of a business license to be a guide, because I know they're getting paid somewhere around $300 or so to each person. So is there any teeth in that as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town of Guernsey currently doesn't have a business licensing bylaw. I don't really have the information from a federal or provincial standpoint, but that's definitely something that I could take a look into.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So the current issue is that people don't have to provide identification. Or they do have to, but they don't have to. I mean, like, there's nothing that's, how is this going to change that? How is this going to force people to provide identification? Other than the short form being something that's, easier to put on paper, how does this change the ability to enforce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would still require, obviously, that information, but with the collaboration with Niagara Regional Police, we hope that their assistance in this matter can help us gain that identity of that individual. It's just basically, if we were to do this investigation on our own without the collaboration of the Niagara Regional Police, that's where we would run into this issue, and we're hoping with the collaboration with Niagara Regional Police that we can use their assistance in gaining that information from them.
Sorry, through you again, Your Worship. So how is that different than this past week? Couldn't we have collaborated with regional police previously? Or is it just because the short form didn't allow them to ticket? Is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, Niagara Regional Police had a different interpretation of the bylaw and did not have the current amendment in place. So unfortunately, that collaboration couldn't happen, but we are now working towards that, and we'll be able to, for all future issues, hopefully work with them on this matter.
Thank you.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there's a misconception in the community that a lot of these hunters were entering the lake from Lincoln. But I don't think there's anywhere they can launch a boat in Lincoln unless they travel across some of the development property down there. I don't think there's any launching areas down there. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not that I know of, that they have a accessible boat launch in that area.
So I believe one of the other councillors kind of verified that there this week, that they are actually, in fact, going into the water with their boats from foreigners, I believe. Let's call it a spade here. Let's not mess around and say a property owner. It's foreigners marina where they're getting into the water with their boats. So have you approached, or as an NRP approached the owners of foreigners and asked them to work with us, intervene, help intervene and tell us what's going on? Because, I mean, once duck hunting season opens, or geese hunting season opens, the moment it opens, NRP and or our bylaw officers should be parked down there, waiting for people to arrive. Is that part of the plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that would be the plan. We want to give a property, across the board, a property owner the ability to rectify the situation on their own rather than moving forward with charges. So we always try to ensure that we have a stepped enforcement plan. So, for example, that would be the next tool in our investigation belt, as this investigation has not been completed at this time.
Can these hunters enter the waters from 50 Point? Have they been, or can they?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not witnessed that myself, so I can't for sure say that they entered through 50 Point as well.
I guess if they do, they have to pass through the D&D property, don't they? They could get shot by someone on their rifle range. I do agree with Councillor DeFlavio. I mean, on the escarpment, we have a lot of agriculture. We have farmers. We have some small businesses up there, and if there's any hunting going on up there, I think they should be banned completely, unless it is exactly people protecting their crops, protecting their livestock. That is a whole different scenario, and we need to make sure we cover that off for sure in the new bylaw. Another question is, how far can we go in terms of penalizing the hunters? Can we like confiscate their trucks, confiscate their guns, confiscate their boats? Can we fine them big amounts of money? I mean, how far can we go with this, Henry?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the current time, the way that we do it by summoning them to court, if they were a corporation, they could receive a lot higher fines into the hundreds of thousands, but currently the judge would make that fine of up to $25,000 for first offense. I don't know of any legislation that gives them the power to seize equipment used in that offense, but that's definitely something that we can obviously take a look into.
I strongly suggest that. I know that if you're moose hunting, for example, and you don't have a license, or you're caught hunting without a license, they will confiscate your firearms and your truck and whatever else you have. So I don't think this is any different in one aspect or the other. So I think we need to incorporate that. I think we need to make this penalty really, really tough. This is this community. This is a small community. People live right down to the lake here. It's not like, North Bay, for example, where you've got this big forest around it. We can go out and you can actually do hunting. This is not hunting. This is killing. I mean, it's just like shooting fish in a barrel. It doesn't even make any sense to me. If I was a hunter, I'd go hunt. This is not hunting. This is just killing for the sport of it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's on waters, on shoreline, where people live. So I don't want to grandstand here, but I'm sure everybody gets the picture. Anyways, thanks, Henry.
Any further questions or comments from council? Councillor Sharwa.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Now, are we still on just the duck hunting, or is this just hunting in general? Okay. Okay, so with discharge, I want to make sure that this is, that we're really looking at, that there's no commercial gain of any sort, that there's no renting of properties, that there's no sport hunting whatsoever. I don't have an issue if there is a coyote problem, if that's an issue, that we have the ministry come and deal with it, and somebody from the ministry is the one that's dealing with it. I don't think it should be just any resident taking it on themselves, so I would like that to be included as well.
Our clerk's going to clarify timelines for getting this into place.
Yes, so the recommendation in the report, first of all, we need to, for the next meeting, amend our current discharge of firearm and bows bylaw to include the short form wording and set fines, and also to include the waters in our boundary. Once that a bylaw is approved, we would have to get the provincial approval. And once that happens, we want to make sure, we will also be contacting our public prosecutor to ensure that there's no issues if our tickets do get appealed, right? Like, we don't want continuous appeals, and that they are in support of our changes. So that would be our next step. And then once that's all sorted, we would conduct an open house and provide greater communication, and we will continue to collaborate with NRP for the enforcement piece and Lincoln. Yep.
Thank you, Sarah. Need a mover and seconder for the discharge bylaw. Moved by Councillor Frey, second by Councillor Vardy.
Are we allowed to ask any questions?
No, you would have had to register as a delegation.
Clarification on the bylaw?
No, you would have had to register as a delegation.
There's no clarification, Mayor. There's no clarification.
Moved by Councillor Frey, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that report BYL 23-01, discharge of firearms on Lake Ontario dated January 9th, 2023 be received, and that staff be directed to amend the discharge of firearms and bows bylaw number 20-62 as amended to include short-form wording, set fines, and provide a new graphical boundary, including waters, and that staff be directed to contact the prosecution's office to coordinate support in the enforcement of the amended bylaw, and that staff be directed to conduct an open house and greater communication regarding the amended bylaw, that staff collaborate with Niagara Regional Police, NRP, for assistance in enforcement. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the bylaw. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Sharwell. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Sharwell. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-01 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third reading. Councillor Vardy, Councillor Costanzi. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Costanzi. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-01 read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. Yeah. Need a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-02 and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for the second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Costanzi. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Costanzi. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-02 read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned.